All right, folks, here we are. So we're going to go into GUI and game management for our Apple Picker. This is the fifth video in the series. And so we'll pick up with GUI and game management. And so what we're going to add first is a score counter. And I'm going to jump back into Unity. And I want to make sure that I'm still working on scene 0. So if we had any doubt, we could double click on scene 0 and it's going to be the one that loads up in this space. And so while I'm doing this, I might also want to just have the text up, and let's take a look at how we're going to do the whole thing. So first we are going to put in a game object. It's going to be a UI object, and we're going to add text. And so we're going to be drawing this against the canvas, right? And so I'm going to go to game object, UI, and we're going to do text. All right. And as soon as we do that, we get, what a mess. We get this sort of view of the text over here. And I'm on my hand motion tool, or my hand interface tool here. And I can zoom in and out of this by clicking and zooming and everything. And so you see that this is unreasonably large in terms of how the text shows up overall. But, if you keep zooming out and out and out, it's going to be just this giant thing. And really, where we're concentrating is kind of down here in the corner where our view is. If we switch from an isomorphic to a perspective view, we can kind of see how those things fall in line. We can double click and kind of resolve things. Now you notice down here though, what's happening is that our text kind of shows up down in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. And it shows up over here too as a canvas item and then a text item. And then you'll notice that there is also an event system that got added to this view here as well. So let's go back to the instructions and follow along. You saw the canvas, you saw the scene pane, you saw the very large 2D box, and the whole thing. And so we're going to double click on the canvas in the hierarchy to zoom out and see the whole thing. So I'm going to double click on canvas, and that's where we get to see it as just this box kind of floating in space. But this will be scaled to match your game pane. So if you have the game pane set it to a 16:9 aspect ratio, the canvas will follow suit. And then you can click the 2D button atop the scene pane to switch to a 2D view that can make the canvas work a little bit easier. And that guy is right here. And so we click that. And that's more of our 2D view. And then I'm going to zoom on back in. And we have the 2D canvas. It's kind of sitting up here. And then we have our 3D isometric view down here. Okay. So there's also a description of the event system here, and you have the text game object that's being described here as well. And as a child of the canvas, you'd see the text game object. You can double click on it to zoom in on it, and the text will be black, and we're going to change the color and the name of this in step 4. So what I'm going to do is double click here, and that brings our text into focus. I'm going to change the text from that to high score. Right. And so now we have high score there, and we're going to also follow the directions to make the high score inspector match what is shown in figure 2810. Okay, so high score is viewable here, and we're going to first go into the rect transform component of the high score inspector. We're going to set anchors at min x0, y1, x0, y1. So min max 0, 0, 1, 1. Okay. All right. So in rect transform component of the high score inspector. That's right here. And we're going to do min max as 0, 0, 1, 1. You have to twirl down that anchors there, and we're going to do the min is 0, y is 1, 0, and 1. Okay. And so what this does, this allows the, and we can mouse over here to see the description of it, the normalized position in the parent rectangle that the lower left corner is anchored to. So this allows us to anchor, just kind of like in some of the Adobe software, you have that little doohickey in the middle of objects, and you can move it up to the corners. And this is, if we end up rotating things or something like that, this becomes an access point as well. Okay, so we're also going to set the pivot of 0 and 1. So we're going to go 0 and y is going to be 1. And then our position is going to be 10, negative 6, 0. All right. So position 10, negative 6. And we're going to go 0 on that. And you notice that right away it moved out of our view over here. And so I'm going to click and zoom out. So I'm click and mouse wheel there to click and zoom out and then zoom back in. And you can kind of see where we are in our interface design with the canvas. And we're going to make some changes all throughout here. So after we do this, we're going to do width 256, height 32. All right, so width 256, height 32. And I think that should do it. All right. And then we're going to double click high score in the hierarchy to center it again. So now we can see it in our view. All right, now down to the text component. We're going to set the text to high score 1000. All right, so we're going to do high score colon 1000. Whoops. 1000. We're going to come down here. We're going to do the font size at bold. And we're going to do the font weight at bold. The font size at 28. Line spacing is going to be fine. Color is going to be white, which helps our visibility. So I'm going to just go into this picker, and it's just easiest to go 255, 255, 255. And that gives us a full 255. Could have clicked white there as well, but I like numbers, and so here we are. We are then going to right click on the high score and choose duplicate, and we're going to make another object and call it score counter. All right, so we're going to do that. Right click and duplicate. And then this time we're going to call this score counter. All right. And once we have score counter, we're just going to change the rect, transform, and text values so that we have a score counter that shows up near it, but a little bit to this side. So negative 10, negative 10, negative 6, 0. And just about the rest of it is going to be the same. So we're going to do making sure that we're on score counter. We see score counter above, and we're going to go negative 10, negative 6, 0, and we're going to click R on here. And when we do that, we are going to allow it to be in raw edit mode, and our text for that is going to be just 1000. All right, and so I think, let's see. Comparing everything else, the anchors are going to be 1, 1. One's down. Okay, 1, 1, 1, 1. And then let's do, we have a pivot? Pivot is also, whoops, 1, 1. All right. And so there's our score. Shows up right about there. And 0's across for rotation, 1's is scale. Text is 1000. The rest of this should be just about the same. Let's do a right alignment instead of a left alignment. That's going to push it over to the right of the screen. And so the alignment's going to be basically on the text box itself. If I wanted to center that, I could double click there. But you'll notice that just like a basic word processing software or something like that, you have left align and right align according to the boxes that you have available to you. Okay. Oh, let's see what else. Let's just make sure everything's good. Wrap, truncate, none, material, raycast target. Everything looks okay here. And let's see. I think we are in pretty good shape here. So let me give it a good once over, and then we'll move on to add the points. Okay, very good. So that there's a lot of little details in that screen, but at the very end of it, what you should end up with is you should have a score counter that's positioned on the left of the screen, to the right of the screen, with anchors at 1-1 for min max. You'll notice that the anchors are going to show up in the upper right hand corner. And we had a couple of additional settings, including this raw edit mode, and it's making sure that Unity honors the position instead of trying to be more opinionated about it. So just bear that in mind. It's one of those little details that probably isn't very meaningful until it becomes meaningful. So now what we want to happen is this. Let's think through this real quick. We want, whenever we hit the basket, we want some points, okay? So this is how we're going to approach it. The script that changes these values is not going to be the score itself. It's going to come from the C# script attached to basket. So we're going to open the basket script again, and I should still have that pretty close anyway. Let me see. Let's go back here. I should have this basket available, and I'll pull that up in this window. Maximize this out so we can see the whole thing. All right, and so here we are, and we're going to go back to our code, and what we're going to do is add in using Unity Engine.ui. So I'm going to switch back over to there, and go here, and go using Unity Engine .ui. Cool. All right. And then save that. And noticing a peculiar sort of behavior of Visual Studio here. I keep saying Visual Basic. Honestly, honest to God, it's an old habit. And who knows? You know, life is very long. I've been on this planet for 45 years, and I learned how to do Visual Basic 25 years ago, and it's the thing that still sticks in my head every time I say Visual something. Cheers, don't get old. All right, no, please do get old. It's a lot better when you're older. It really is. So using Unity Engine UI is what we're going to be doing here. And then we're going to come on down here, and then on collision is where we're going to end up putting some of our code. So if collided with tag Apple, destroyed collided with. This is where we get into some of the logic stuff, and let's take a look at how we do this. So under public class basket mono behavior, what we're going to do is bring in header set dynamically. So I'm going to go back into my code, and right up here, right after we get started here, we're going to do header and then paren set dynamically. All right. I think we need a little, we don't need a little semicolon after that. Probably doesn't hurt, but I'm just going to leave it off. And then we're going to create a public variable. Public text, and we're going to call this score GT, right? So that's score game text, and then down here under start, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go game object score go game object find score counter. So it's score go is the game object. So we're gonna bring this in here. So we have GT. Which is the text that we're going to update. We're making that public, and then inside of the game object, we're going to have a private variable or a variable only available there called score GO. So we're going to say game object, right, score GO equals game object. And remember, whenever I say equals, I'm not really saying equals. Fade. We're going to call that find. We are using a method where score GO is going to be a local variable, game object. It's not private, it's a local variable. It's going to hang out here, and we're going to find the game object called score counter. And there's only one. We named it as one, so we find that one. And then we're going to find the get the text component of that game object, and then we're going to set it to 0. So here we go. So we go game. Oops, I'm sorry. Score GT equal score GO dot get component, and the component of this we want is the text component of it, and then we're going to put in little parentheses after that. The syntax is important. You'll see why as you get used to this stuff. And then we're going to do the starting number of points to 0. So we're going to go score GT equal 0. All right. Sorry, text dot text equal 0. Okay. Now check this out. We're not setting it actually equal to 0. Since it's text, it needs a string, right? So score GT, that's a text field in basket, and then the text field needs a string. So we're going to put in the string literal, quotes around this item so that it's 0. But we have to do math to calculate the scores. So that's a little bit of a conundrum. We have the text that's displaying as 0 whenever we start off. I think this is good enough to be able to hit play and to see if it works. And so when I start, you notice that high score is going to be 1000, and that's kind of a dummy score for now. And then we have a 0, and right now it's not actually adding anything up whenever my apples go away, but it gives us some placeholder text to be in place there. Okay, so far so good. And again, this is a video, so you can always go backwards in time to check this stuff out. Now, down here, we're going to code for the collision. So on collision enter, we're going to come down here. As soon as that apple is destroyed, what we're going to do is we're going to create an integer called score. And for that score, it's going to parse the score gt.text. Okay, that's kind of fancy sounding, but essentially what happens is inside this if statement, once there's a collision, we're going to go int score equal int.parse. And then inside here, we're going to go score gt.text. Okay. And what we have is a situation where we have score gt.text. Where would we see that? We saw that up here. Private variable and score gt. I'm sorry, not a private variable, a very public variable. We told it was public, right? Public text score gt. So we get that text from our score game object, and then we set the text to 0. We did that dynamically. So what this is going to do, it's going to check to see what the score is based on what the current value of the text is. Then we're going to add 100 points for catching the apple. And this is going to go on forever, right? So we're going to go score plus equal 100, okay? Which is really just a fancy way of saying score is going to be reset to the current score plus 100, okay? And I'm going to put this in quotes because this is not a variable that we're using. I'm just doing this to illustrate that what's happens here is we take 100 and we add it to the current score and then store it back into that score. Okay, so we get this one, and if the score is 0, whenever an apple hits, it's going to make it 100. If the score is 500, it hits an apple, it's going to make the score 600, okay? And then we're going to have to display that back again. So the last step is to do score gt.text, right? And remember, we have score gt dot text, and we're going to set that equal, just like we did up here. We set it equal to 0, but we're going to set it back to the current score. Now, there's one little thing we have to do, is we have to change the score to string, and so we're doing some string conversion here as well. And we're going to go score to string, and then we're going to bring in the current score, right? Oh, say no, that's it. We're going to do parens, and I think that's all we need to do. Okay, so that's what our text. That's what our code looks like now. We have the tag colliding. We're colliding with the apple as it's tagged, and then we have all of these scoring functions happening afterwards. So if you've done everything right, and you get it to work. Basically what's going to happen is we're going to have a little scoring item here, and you'll see our score go up in the air, and voila, we have just the really basic working game of an apple picker, a Kaboom clone, Apple's finest in 1985. Atari's finest in 1985. And it's a great little game as a first starter game. Okay, so now he goes through the explanation. Please, make sure that you read through this so that you kind of understand what's going on. But we have to move on from this. Now, what we have to do is we have to notify Apple Picker that an apple was dropped, because what we want to do here is we want to delete a basket if you miss something, and there are 3 baskets, remember? So each one of these lines on the screen, when we hit play, each one of these lines represents 1 basket, and these are our 3 lives, and so this is going to track our lives. As soon as we miss one, right, one goes off the screen, we want one of these lines to go away, and then the other, and then the other, and then that's how we lose, right? So here we go. What we're going to do here is inside the apple, in the C# script there, we're going to do header set in inspector in that space here. Okay, so let me go and find my apple itself. Now, the reason why we're doing this on the apple is because the apple is the thing that is being destroyed, right? So if this game object ends up falling off the screen and gets destroyed, then this object will also be the one to notify the game that an apple has been missed. Okay, so follow me again when I say that. The apple that we're tracking here, the thing that we're tracking, is the thing that's going to be falling off the screen. And once it falls off the screen, that's the thing that can let the system know, like, hey, I'm no longer catchable, and we need to get rid of one of the baskets. Okay, so we go back in here, and right inside the public class, we're going to do a header here, and we're going to do little brackets and then quotes thingy here. Let me see if I got that right. I always get the brackets wrong whenever I'm doing this. Here we go. All right, so header, it's not header attribute, parentheses quote. I'm sorry, you might be getting a little motion sickness as I move back and forth between these screens. But okay, so header and quotes, and then we're going to say set in inspector. All right, and then we don't look. I don't need that. So that's what our header is going to look like. And then we have the public static float that we're going to use. That bottom Y is there. All right, so we don't have to update that. But now down here, look, we have this destroy this game object, and then we're going to do this complicated little piece of code here that allows us to call for apple picker down here. Okay, so apple picker is it's a bona fide, right? It's a game, it's a script that we have. So we have apple picker, and we're going to call that apple picker AP script. And when I say that it's a bona fide, it's, apple picker exists because it's a C# class, right? Like this code exists, and it's a public class apple picker, so it becomes an object that we can target. That's really where the object-oriented programming stuff really comes to play, and we'll go back into some of the other chapters to take a look at that stuff at a later time. But right now, we're at Apple Picker AP script, and we're going to log our camera in here as the object we're tracking. So AP script is going to be camera dot main dot get component. All right. And then we're going to get the component of Apple Picker from that. Okay. Syntax is a little bit weird in C# if you're used to other programming languages. But basically what this is allowing us to do is to notify the Apple Picker that an apple has been destroyed. So AP script dot apple destroyed. Right. So here we are. Okay, so AP script apple destroyed. Okay. So let me make sure that I've just got everything set up the way I need it to be. So this is what this code is doing. Grabs a reference to the Apple Picker. Because the camera class has a built-in static variable camera.main that references the main camera. Using game object find main camera to obtain a reference to main camera is not necessary. We don't have to look for that name. There's already a built-in called main for that. So then get component Apple Picker is then used to grab a reference to the Apple Picker script component on the main camera and assign it to a variable that we created called AP script. Now, accessing public variables and methods of the Apple Picker class instant attached to the main camera becomes possible. All of that sounds like gibberish. I know it sounds like gibberish. But what it means is that we now have access to the Apple Picker class that we've created, and we have access to it by using the main camera. All right. Now, where he says this calls a non-existent Apple destroyed method of the Apple Picker class, we need to create that. Right. And over in our code, what you'll see right away is there's an error that's showing up in the console. It's kind of important to note what's happening here. I'll zoom in here to see it. So this is showing an error and some inconsistencies in the line numbers and that sort of thing. I'm not worried about those because everything seems to be working okay. But I'd want to go back through and really clean up the code afterwards anyway. So, and there's a red underline. It means that this doesn't exist anywhere. And so we're going to need to make it part of the Apple Picker code itself. So let's go back over here. And we're going to look at the public class Apple Picker. And we're going to create a brand new public void called Apple Destroy. Okay. So, wrong window. I'm going to go into Apple Picker. Double click that. And we had all this code that we put in here. But we need to create a brand new class. And we're going to say void. Let me make sure we get it. And it's going to be a public void because it has to be accessible to other classes. And so that public and private concept can be really slippery at first. But here's how it goes. So we have public void Apple destroyed. We put our mustaches in there. And then this becomes a little bit trickier. So I'll try and go as slowly or reasonably as I can. Because we have multiple apples, we're going to treat this as an array. There are, at any time, given any point in our code, there are going to be multiple game objects, all with the tag apple. And so what happens is Apple Destroy is going to end up destroying all of the existing apples that are on the screen. So let's check this out. All right. So we're going to do game object, and I'm hoping that I'm explaining this right. And then when we put brackets after something that we're declaring as we have the game object, it's going to be an array of those game objects. So it's kind of like a list in its actuality. But we'll take a look at that after we type it in. So we're going to say T apple array. I'm going to say equal game object dot find game objects with tag, and then we're going to do parentheses and we've got apple. Right? And so now we have game object called tApple array, and that's going to build us a grouping of all of the objects that are currently in our system that have the tag apple. And then what we want to do is for each of those, for each of the game objects, so game object t go tgo in tApple array, right? We are going to destroy it. So then we say destroy. I love destroying things. It's so fun. Destroy tgo. Okay. There we go. So, if all goes well and this code works, we have a public void called apple destroy. We are actually, in our Apple script over here, I've just clicked on Apple. We have this Apple Picker app script. This is where we're going to find this is where we're going to make sure that we're finding Apple script. And now Apple Picker AP destroyed, Apple destroyed, that's going to come in. If we click on that, it'll color up because it can find it now. Excuse me, it's part of the system. All right. So what else can I tell you about this? So let's make it playable, and then we'll come back to destroying the baskets itself. So here we go. We'll hit play. Notice our errors went away. And here comes an apple. I hit it. It counts. I've got my score going. Okay, so this is gratifying. And then let me drop one on purpose. And then as soon as I drop one, all of the rest of the apples disappear. Okay, so note the behavior here. I'm not going to catch any. Note the behavior is as soon as one apple goes off the screen, all of them disappear. And so that's going to be what happens whenever we lose the game. All right. Now, destroying a basket when an apple is dropped. So we're going to go back into the Apple Picker C# script, and we're going to add in Unity Engine scene management here. So I'm going to go into Apple Picker C# script, and then Unity Engine scene management. So we're going to be using Unity Engine scene management, right? And then we're going to go to public class Apple Picker mono behavior, and we have all of these things. And this time we're going to create a public list game object for basket list. So public list, all right. And we're going to make a list of game objects. Note the syntax here. It's going to be a list of a particular type of variable. So all the lists need to be, it's not mix and match with the lists in C#. And we're going to call that variable basket list. So this can be a list of game objects. And we're going to have three items in this list. All right. So basket list, new list game object. Here we go. So down here, before our for loop that creates our three baskets. Remember, we created our baskets dynamically. Based on the basket prefab we had available to us, because the basket prefab is up here as a game object, and this is attached to Apple Picker as the CS script that kind of controls everything. Apple Picker is attached to the camera, right? So like this entire code system is predicated on this being attached to the camera, and so we're going to start off with basket list equals new list, right? And then inside game object, we don't have to put anything, and we're going to end up with that. So basically, anytime we call or anytime we're using this variable basket list, we're going to create a new list game object in that space, right? So we create the new list game object, right? And then down here we do basket list add tBasket go. Right? So that's going to be the last thing that we do. So tBasket go is the instance of a game object for the first basket, second basket, then third basket in sequence. And so when we do basket list, right, dot add, we are now giving ourselves a chance to keep track of how many baskets are left whenever we are working within this system. Okay, let's not make this too complicated. This is basically what ends up happening is we are making 3 baskets, and then whenever we need to destroy it, we have to use code to do that as well. Okay. So here's how it goes. Down here, and this is going to be in our void apple destroyed. Okay. In our void apple destroyed, we were just destroying the apples, right? But what we also need to do is we need to get rid of one of the baskets to amp up the gameplay, right? We want to make this awesome. So first you get rid of all the apples. So that's going to live inside of this for each statement. Lives inside there. And then after we do that, we're going to get the current basket index. All right. And I have to explain indexing here real quick. The basket list dot count -1. Okay. And what we're doing is, so if we have 3 baskets, and let me switch back to the my face so I can see it here. All right, so I'm gonna use my old counting method of using my fingers. Okay, so we have 3 baskets. Computers start counting at 0. So each basket is gonna have an index number assigned to it whenever it's created. So the first basket is at 0, the second basket's at 1, the third basket's at 2. Okay, so we have 3 total baskets, 0, 1, and 2. So let's think of a basketball team has 3 players, 0, 1, and 2. Okay, and these baskets that we're going to be reducing the basket by 1 eventually. So this first line, what this first line is doing is it's saying, okay, we're going to create an integer to keep track of this. This is the basket index value, and this is based on the current count of the list. So starting at 3, at the current count is 3, and then -1, which is index 2, right? Because as I described, this would be 0, 1, and 2. And if I type in a 0, it makes the look even better, right? So the count of this, right? The count of this is 3. So these are 3 items. And so the basket list counts 3 -1. The basket index is 2, right? And so we're going to get rid of essentially the last basket that we have created, right? And so the next line is get a reference to the last basket in the basket list. So we need the game object, tBasket go, and we're creating that new variable right now. And we're saying that's called basket list, basket index. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to remove the last one based on the basket index. So what this code is giving us is essentially, which basket, right? And so basket index is going to be 2. And so we're going to remove 2 first, the one that's numbered 2. And then we do basket list, remove at, and then we do basket index, and that's in parentheses, basket index. And, you know, eventually you'll get to know like when you would use parentheses versus brackets and that sort of thing. But, you know, we're just following along the first time. It's kind of like walking through, you know, any space that you've never navigated before. Lots of rules that we don't quite understand, you know. And think about all the things that you had to learn whenever you walked into, you know, grade school for the first time. You need to know where your locker is. You need to know like who the important people are and everything. And we're just going through this orientation process. But this is a pretty comprehensive orientation to what you can do in Unity. So we store the baskets, and we put all these things together, and we also have created in an aspect of this that we'll be adding a high score to as well. All right. So he goes through and explained kind of what I explained in here, a little bit different detail. And there is one thing that happens after we've done this, and we'll see the error because I want you to see errors happen too. It's part of the process. All right. So let's see if we hit play here. Let's see how it goes. Okay. So I'm going to try and catch some things. All right. So I catch things and my score goes up. All right. I miss one and it goes away. But notice now I've lost one of my baskets. Then I lose my second basket. I lose my third basket. But we still are playing. Oh, my goodness. And so what ends up happening is that we start to get these error messages, argument out of range exception. And so I'm going to hit pause here for a second on here, and I'll zoom in on this. It says argument out of range exception, index was out of range. So what that means is that the index value, because it kept going, we're now at -1 for our index numbers. That's not good. We're too far. We're too far along for an error like this to trip us up. So what we want to do is just let that sit for a while. I'm kind of surprised that he lets that sit right there. I would want to take care of that right away. But anyway, we're going to do adding a high score. So now we make use of the high score text game object, and we do a C# script named high score and add it to the high score game object in the hierarchy pane. So here's how we do it. We go into Unity. We go to game object. We go we go to assets, I'm sorry, and then create new C# script, and we call this high score, right? And we hit enter, and that creates a new high score for us. And then we open that up in our Visual Studio, and we're going to use Unity Engine UI. So I double click on that, you know what? Maybe what I should do is first I need to attach this to something, right? So high score needs to be attached to something, and let me make sure that I attach it to the right place. And we're going to attach it to the high score game object in the hierarchy pane. So we're just going to take this high score script, we attach it to the object, and now we can make cool stuff happen. All right, so now we have high score code that we can work with. I'm gonna bring in my code here. We're gonna go onto the line 4 and add in Unity Engine.ui. I'm gonna just copy and paste this because I'm getting efficient. Not lazy, efficient, right? So now at the end of this, what we want to do is we want to grab this static public int score 1000, and we're going to do static public int score 1000. All right, and let's make sure that we have everything the way we want it to be. All right, so public class high score, static public int score equal 1000, and then we don't have a start in here, so we can just get rid of this. And then we have an update, and update is going to be this. So we're going to do text gt equal this dot get component. Oh, and there's this keyword. All right, so I have to explain that to you too. And then get component text and parens and then score. Okay, did I get that right? I got that right. So text and then gt excuse me, dot text equal, quote, high score, colon, space, and then plus score. Okay. So, let's break this down in a way that hopefully we understand. We have high score. You remember what high score looks like. It's high score colon 1000, right? So that's what the current high score is in this game. We want to exceed that high score. We'll test it out and see how it goes. We've attached the high score script to high score. And in that script, here's what we do. We have the public integer score, and we're going to have that public integer score be 1000. Then, void update, text GT. This is going to be the text component of this object. So the text component of this means the text component of the object that the script is attached to. So when I look at this object, I know that high score is attached over here. And you notice that most of the variables that we've been creating thus far have been showing up down here. But curiously, Mr. Static public int does not show up there. And that's because we don't want to give somebody the chance to control that. It's a public integer, but we're controlling it from in here. So on update of the game, we're going to update the high score if the high score has been exceeded, right? So we have a couple of other things to contend with here. So, and then we can access it. If we make the integer score not only public, but also static, gives us the ability to access it from any other script simply by typing high score dot score. And so then the lines in update simply display the value of score in the text component, all right? And explains a little bit more about how this is working. And then let's take a look. So once we get past that second step, we go to the third step, the basket C# script, and all the way down to the end, if collided with tag apple. So in there, again, based on the collision, what we're going to do is check to see if the high score has been exceeded. So in the basket, on collision, enter, right? If collided with tag, we're going to do all this stuff. We're going to destroy the collided with integer score, integer parse, the score plus equal 100. That's going to make the score 100 there. And then we're going to check to see if the score in here is larger than the score in the high, or greater than the score in the high score dot score. So we're going to say if score equal, score, high score dot score. All right, we're going to put those in parentheses. Now, oh, this is delightful. It's going to mess with your mind if you try and think about it too hard. So let's not try and think about it too hard. If the score is greater than the current high score that we're accessing in Apple Picker, right? Oops, not Apple Picker, high score. So we're in basket, and we say, okay, if the current score in this space here, in this space only, is greater than high score dot score, then we're going to make the current score the high score. We'll see this in action in just a second, but I do want to make sure that we are paying attention to something very, very important here. The score here in the basket is not the same score that is in the high score, right? The score here in the basket is a local variable, which means it only exists inside of this private void area. This is a private space, okay? Now, with this being a private space, that score only exists here. And so there's no confusion between this score here and then the score that we're accessing in the class high score dot score with that variable. So what this really underscores, pardon the pun, it's 45 minutes. It's 50 minutes into this thing. Like, give me one pun. So we have what this underscores is the use of private versus public variables within this system, and why it's so important, and how private and public variables are not necessarily the same as local variables. Any variable that you use inside of a private void would be a local variable, right? Anything that is declared public becomes public. So it gives you many different ways of saying things are public and private. It's very versatile, very confusing at first. Okay? So now we're going to fix that out of range error because we're going to be in the apple picker script to finish this out. And then what happens is if basket list count hits 0, then we're going to load the scene 0. Okay? And here we go. We're going to go over to apple picker, and then after we have destroyed all the apples, right, and we remove all of those, we're going to just put in a little if statement, and if evaluates the true or false, right? So if basket list dot count 0, right, we're going to use 2 equal signs there. And we'll use 2 equal signs. It checks for equivalence. Okay. And evaluates, true or false. So on the left, on the right, if this is true, then we are going to go to Scene Manager. And then we're going to go dot load scene. Oops. In parentheses, scene underscore 0. And I'm sorry, it's underscore scene underscore 0. And I think that takes care of it. All right, so now we're just going to reload the game. And now on line 5, I've been kind of glossing over this stuff. But you want to make sure that you're saving stuff in here as well. Okay? So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to play my game. All right. So here I go. I'm going to play. And once I catch 10 apples, I should exceed my high score. 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to let one drop. Okay. So dropped one. Okay. 7, 8, 9,000. Watch what happens to the high score. High score and the regular score are going to go up at the same time. All right. So now I'm going to let it go. And the last one falls off the screen, and then it resets the beginning, resets my score back to 0. High score then becomes 1,500, and it saves that temporarily. Okay, and so it's only going to save the high score for as long as we have the game open. And in the very last portion of this, we can actually store player preferences in Unity. And so what player prefs are, they're variables that store information from Unity scripts on the computer so that the information can be called later and will stay with the same machine. Okay, so once you make this game, you export it, then you can challenge yourself to get high score. So we're going to use this void called awake in here. And I want to make sure that we're in the right script. So we want to be in the high score script. And so over here. And so we have the void update. And down here we're going to do void awake. Oh, I did not want to do private void. It's just a void. Okay. All right. And then, so we do void awake, and then what it's going to do, it's going to ask, we're going to ask to see if the high score already exists. We're going to read it in to the interface. So we're going to go if, player prefs dot has key. And the key is just going to be the key, like you store a key value pair. It's kind of like what CSS looks like when you have the color and then the change of the color. That's a key value pair, and so that's what's going to be stored here. Anyway, we have the score that is the high score that belongs to this, and we're going to say player prefs. And then dot get int. And we want to get it as an integer because we need to do some math on it. And call it high score. Okay. So if the key exists, then we pull that in, and then we assign the high score to the current high score. So then we say player prefs dot set int. And this pattern is called a getter setter, a get and set pattern. And you'll see this a lot as you get a little bit further in programming. So high score, and then we're going to set it to the current score. Okay, cool. All right, and so that's our void awake. And then what happens is, if score player prefs get in high score, then it exceeds the high score. Then we're going to set the player prefs to the high score as well. So up here, and let's change the order of this so it matches up with the code, shall we? So we're going to go over to here, void awake, and get rid of that. Come up here, boom, boom, boom. Okay, so there's void awake and void update. I don't think the order matters here, and I'm that's why I wasn't too worried about the things being out of order. But I'm going to stick with the book. I don't want to make any silly mistakes here. So if score is greater than, right, player prefs, we want to check the current player prefs, get int high score, and then we want some curly braces, and then we're going to go player prefs, whoops, wow, player prefs, come on, player prefs dot set int high score, high score. Okay, so you'll start to see patterns emerge like this getter setter pattern. You're gonna see an object that you are looking for based on so players preferences. If the key exists, then we're gonna get it, and then we set this as long as the game is on. So that's what awake is basically asking for. And then at every time the frame updates, we get the current score. We produce the current score. If the score ends up getting higher than the high score, then we're going to set the high score in our player preferences to the new high score. And so we're always writing back to our storage we're always writing back, as I said, to the computer's memory if we have the player preferences set. Notably, awake is code that happens when the high score class is first created, and awake occurs before start. So we're going to actually grab those player prefs before the game even starts, and so that means that if we exceed the high score, and let's play it to test it, and hit play here. And I'm gonna do really well, and I'm gonna exceed the high score. So let's go a little bit faster. I could, if I was play testing, I could go in and actually increase the high score here. Increase the speed to make it go faster while I'm testing and that sort of thing. You kind of get into, some programs called God mode, which is kind of weird, but what are you gonna do? So anyway, I'm gonna lose intentionally. And then the high score did not reset to my current high score whenever I was playing. So something is not quite right in this. And so I'm going to investigate to see what it is that I missed that should be updating, or see what's going on. So Let me give it a quick read through, and then I'll be right back. So, so that's the thing I missed was if I restart the game, it should read the new high score in. So if I start it back up again, oh, it didn't. Oh, baloney. All right, so I'm gonna try it again. So let me do a quick read through, and I'll see what I missed. Okay, and lo and behold, I saw my error, and I'll give you 1,000,000 bonus points if you saw the error before I did. Note what's happening here. If player prefs has key high score all one word, all one word, all one word. This text is for formatting on screen, so there's a space in there. All one word for the getter, all one word for the setter. Okay, so now what should happen is when I play this. Oh boy, when I play this, I'm gonna go. I should have sped it up too. Boy, missed opportunities. That's okay. So I'm gonna go through and I'm catching. 900, 1000. Okay, so there goes my high score. And I'm gonna intentionally throw the game over here so that I can get to the point where my high score resets. And so my high score now is at 1200. And then watch what happens. I'm going to hit stop. Okay. The display is still going to show 1,000 because this is hard coded, and we're actually replacing this value afterwards. But watch, I'll hit play again, and it's going to pull back my high score and put 1,200 in place. So I did it, y'all. We got it. We got it all the way to the end, and now we have a fully playable game of Kaboom and of Apple Picker, and it only took a couple hours to knock it out. But this last bit did take about an hour to get through, and I did have to go do some digging through here to make sure everything worked out okay, but it did. So Jeremy Gibson Bond adds some ideas of what you can do to do some next steps. So we can put a start screen in here, a game over screen, and then increasing difficulty by tweaking some of those settings and that sort of stuff. And then if you choose to, and I'm not going to demo this for you right now, but if you choose to add either a start screen or a game over screen to a game, you have to add every scene in your game to build settings scene list one at a time. So if you have a one scene game, scene 0, it builds out just that list or that scene. But if you have multiple scenes, you have to add them all to the build settings window, and then scene 0 is the one that's gonna load up. So let's do this. We're in bonus territory. Hopefully you got the game working. You can save it out, and you can be done with it. But what I'm gonna do over here is I'm gonna go to build settings. And under build settings, we get our options that we have added in for our different target platforms. Now, I've added in a whole bunch because I don't know, I did, but we added as a group. I think we just added WebGL in here, and so I have WebGL in here. And if I click on player settings, the player settings are going to show up in here, and then we can change our company names. So Elon, so I'm Media, and this is our Apple Picker prototype version 0.1. We can add our items in here. We can do settings for this. Icon not applicable. Resolution, default canvas weight or width and height 960 by 600. I'm hoping that this is in proportion to 960 by 600. I'm hoping this would be in proportion to a 16 by 9 setting. I believe it is. And then we have different templates we can use. We have splash images, other settings, lots of stuff that we could end up doing. And then publishing settings, all of this stuff is here. So all I'm going to do there is, and then we do add open scenes. And so scene 0 is open. Over here in the build settings, and then we do WebGL. We could choose development build or not development build, and then we should be able to build and run this. So let's double check what's happening over here. And our WebGL build should end up working. And sorry, I thought I had WebGL loaded on here. I must not, because it would give me the option to do it if I did. But none of these other ones are available to me. So I think I must have only done the Mac standalone target build. So I'm just going to do a target platform build, and I'm going to do a build and run on this. And so I click on build and run. It's going to allow me to save this out as something. And I always want to, what I usually like to do is keep my, I don't want to say always, I like to keep my builds separately from my project items. So I'm going to put those in, I'll tell you what, let's do it this way. So I'll do this Unity project. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to keep it in the folder here. And I'm going to save it as our first build. So I'll say Apple Picker first build. I'm going to smash all those things together and let's see how it goes. I click on save, and let's see how this build goes. And at the end, I get a little message. It says build successful, showing up off screen for me. And you get a little message in here. It says build completed with a result of success. And then I believe my Apple Picker is now showing up in a separate window. And so I'm going to minimize Unity and all the other screens that I have up on my screen, even Visual Studio. I want that window to go away. And yeah, I guess so. So here's my my viewport. I remember that I exported as 960 by 600, and I'll put it in a window, and I'll click play. And there's my game, made in Unity, and look at it. Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it? Look at that. And the graphics are a little bit bigger looking because they're scaled to the window, and at this point I'm just kind of playing, having fun. And I see that my high score has gone, so I'm gonna let my game do its thing, go away, and it should reset. And then when it resets the next time, my high score is saved along with that in the memory. What's even better is that if I close this Apple Picker prototype and I go back out to my file system and I browse for it, and recalling that I put it in Unity projects and I had it in my fourth folder, and then we had our Apple Picker first build app. I'm going to drop this out to the desktop because it doesn't belong there, to be honest with you. And then we have this icon here. I double click on it and it should have saved my high score. So give it a second to load up. Hopefully, there we go. And then I can pick what window it's gonna load up on, and I can also, since this is a Unity building machine, I'm not going to check this option key. But I hit play here, and oh, now it's scaled to full screen. All right, so I did not do it windowed that time. So so there's our game. All right, I'm gonna hit escape maybe to get out of this. I don't know. Who knows? I'll get out of it somehow. But that's the end of the video. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something, and we'll see you soon. Bye.